There will never be another Pac-12 football game, at least not in the form we know the conference as today. Sorry, conference championship games, they don't really count. Yet, after another very fun and vastly underrated season of Pac-12 football, you can't help but ask yourself, why? Why are we blowing all of this up for a few extra dollars? Look, I'll freely admit this. I am hopelessly hopeless when it comes to Pac-12 football. I've grown up with it. I've experienced with it. It is amazing, at least in my perspective. However, I think we can all admit to ourselves destroying the Pac-12 is utterly stupid and a decision we will come to regret.
Turn off the light, 'cause it's not on the sun. You're hopelessly hopeless, I hope so.
Jonathan Smith has left Oregon State for Michigan State, a move, by the way, history tells us is likely to end poorly for him. The Washington State Cougars managed to coug it one final time in conference play, and somewhere in a Manhattan penthouse, former Pac-12 Commissioner Larry Scott sits contently with his terrible decisions while eating caviar off $100 bills. Fans out west, by and large, don't want the conference to end. Sure, you have a few loudmouths happy to leave their rivals in the dust. They will also be the same ones bitching and moaning about 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time kickoff times when their program ends up playing out back east. So it goes. I have visited as many Pac-12 stadiums as possible and attended as many Pac-12 games as possible over the past 2 years, knowing the end was nigh. Of course, I didn't foresee the complete demolition of the conference, which still feels totally surreal if I'm being honest. On my travels, I soaked it all in and tried to enjoy as much as possible. Sure, some of the games were a lot better than others. I'll never forget seeing Oregon State win on a Hail Mary at Stanford. For entirely different reasons, I'll also never forget watching this couple argue incessantly throughout the entire Washington-UCLA matchup at the Rose Bowl. If you're going to fight for 4 hours in public, just break up. That relationship ain't lasting. End it. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend everything was great. You already know my experience with Auburn fans when they visited Cal Berkeley. I contend the USC game day experience at the Coliseum is infinitely boring. And if you ever watch Utah play at Rice-Eccles Stadium, well, it is like traveling back into some kind of bizarro world. And it must be said, Washington students are total dicks. They own being dicks, but they're dicks nonetheless. However, I will cherish all of my Pac-12 memories, all of the long drives, all of the brutal travel days. You haven't lived life until you have visited West Wendover, Nevada on the way back from Salt Lake City, ate at a Burgerville in Oregon, or tried to cram in a stop at the Grand Canyon during a trip to see the Arizona schools play. Professional tip here, that is a huge mistake unless you either land or depart from Las Vegas. Trying to drive from Tempe or Tucson to the Grand Canyon, big mistake. We're blowing it all up though. All of the fun and all of the rivalries have been deemed unnecessary because they don't bring in enough money. It's a joke that's not funny, sort of like what Fansville has become these past 3 years.
My boy is becoming a fan!
Touchback!
Oh!
That was right to you.
The only real difference between the Pac-12 and the other Power 5 conferences is time zones. People in the Eastern and Central Standard time zones, they just don't watch football out west. Those folks will check out the box scores on Sunday morning, and they may even watch highlights of a game or two should something remarkable have happened, but by and large, they just assume football in the West sucks because none of the teams in the Pac-12 are undefeated. This narrative has become particularly strong in the college football playoff era. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say the Pac-12 hasn't had down years over the past decade, because it most definitely has. You know, for instance, 2021 was just a mediocre mess. Facts are facts, and that is a fact. However, college football unlike any other sport out there, is cyclical in nature. Over the past decade alone, we have seen tides ebb and flow. Clemson and Oklahoma fell back to the pack after dominating the college football playoff scene in the late 2010s. Georgia has risen after being on the outskirts at the start of the CFP era. Notre Dame comes and goes. And in 2023, the Pac-12 is the best conference from top to bottom, despite having been so mediocre and so brutal in 2021. Everything in college football cycles in and out. The one thing working in the Pac-12's favor over all of these years is that it's always been entertaining, if nothing else. Even the bad teams can put on a show from time to time. You're not getting Iowa unable to complete a forward pass or the general incompetence of Texas A&M on a weekly basis over the past few seasons. At the end of the day, what's better? A fun, competitive, and entertaining conference with a lot of really good teams, or one where everyone is basically playing out the string apart from maybe 3 or 4 games that actually matter in the grand scheme of things? Sure, the Pac-12 didn't get teams in the college football playoff most years, but it was a far better conference from a fan and viewership standpoint. Hell, just the fact that we here in the Pac-12 didn't have to listen to a bunch of misguided hype about how Texas was back annually only to fall flat on their face makes our conference better than the Big 12. And with a Texas reference, that means you get to see a picture of me doing horns down by the Mountain West Championship trophy. Ah, what a great time that was. In the end, that didn't matter. Nothing mattered apart from money. Oh, yes, money. A great conference has been disassembled over cash concerns. We've been continually told that schools need more money to stay competitive in this modern college football landscape. That argument doesn't hold water in the slightest. Where is all of this money going? That is a question no one has ever been able to answer. I mean, you need more money for hiring coaches and paying for extremely large buyouts, maybe an occasional facilities upgrade, new jerseys, fat athletic director bonuses. Yeah, none of those things are really needed to be competitive in college football though. Sure, nice facilities can help and recruits do like cool uniforms, but plenty of teams have won without those things. Many more programs have lost when they had those items. Ultimately, more money rarely equals better results. How exactly has all of that extra SEC dough helped Texas A&M and Florida over the past 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years? Hell, Auburn just lost to New Mexico State and paid for the privilege. Nebraska has gone from national powerhouse to national afterthought in the Big Ten. The ACC cannibalized the Big East. Now, half of the schools that were pushing for that move want to leave. Money is nice, but it is far from everything. Utah has greatly surpassed UCLA and USC when it comes to football, despite having less money than the LA schools. TCU and Baylor have been more relevant than Texas recently, despite the Longhorns having much deeper pockets. Money can help, but you still have to know what to do with it. More often than not, you just see schools pissing away cash down the drain almost as fast as it comes in. That is what sticks in my craw about the Pac-12 imploding. Instead of getting fun and exciting games like UCLA and Cal, or Washington playing Oregon State, or Washington State, Oregon, or whatever the combination you want to throw out there. It's now going to be USC versus Nebraska and Arizona, West Virginia. And for what? So the Trojans can fund that eventual Lincoln Riley buyout? Money well spent indeed. All things considered, 2 people deserve the majority of blame for all of this: Larry Scott and George Kliavkoff. Those 2 bumbling morons are the epitome of empty corporate suits. The fact this pair of losers will have profited on an entity they have contrived to kill is the biggest injustice of them all. Literally anyone, any single fan in the Pac-12 could have done a better job than Scott and Kliavkoff, likely saving the conference in the process. These two buffoons sat around, dick in hand, while the entire college football landscape passed them by. We will never know what would have happened to the conference had a collection of pretentious school presidents colluded with Scott to pass on Texas and Oklahoma joining the Pac-12 in 2011. This was an absolutely ridiculous decision at the time and has aged about as well as milk left out in a car on a hot summer day. The enduring moment of Kliavkoff's reign of incompetence over the conference, well, apart from him disappearing from public view for the past 5 months, came during the Week 0 opening game between USC and San Jose State. He seemingly made play-by-play guy Ted Robinson and color commentator Yogi Roth read a prepared statement claiming the Pac-12 network would focus on the games and what happens on the field while ignoring everything else occurring behind the scenes. This was tone deaf and did nothing but frustrate the conference's loyal fans. And you would have to be a loyal fan just to be tuning into the Pac-12 network in the first place, because Lord only knows Scott and Kliavkoff did nothing to make the channel that Scott insisted on launching a success in the slightest. The long-winded statement read by the announcers on this day was an insult to the fans who didn't want this to happen, which is a majority of those on the West Coast. That has been a key theme in all of this. West Coast college football fans don't matter. That we simply are here to serve as a decoration for the college football landscape. That if your team and conference doesn't support, like, I don't know, 20 different fan message boards and news websites, you don't get to have a voice, that your voice doesn't matter for whatever reason. If there is anything to be grateful for, I suppose, it is the fact this split was quick. No long, drawn-out goodbyes. As someone who watched the old Western Athletic Conference die a really slow, painful death between 2011 and 2013, certainty can offer at least some solace. You know, Washington State and Oregon State have been dealt pretty bad hands, all things considered, but at least they aren't going to wither on the vine like Idaho and New Mexico State did back then. The situation isn't great, but hey, at least no one is seeking out Chicago State to keep things alive. All of this, it's still totally unnecessary. It still sucks big time, and it is still a terrible idea that we will all probably come to regret down the road, even if the schools themselves refuse to admit it. Welcome to college football in the 2020s, the sport everybody knows is fatally flawed but refuses to fix until they have made themselves rich. R.I.P. Pac-12. You really did deserve so much better than the fate that was ultimately handed down to you. Thank you for allowing me to eulogize about a conference that has meant so much to me as both a kid growing up on the West Coast and someone who went to school on the Palouse and attended classes at Washington State, and just someone who enjoys West Coast college football. It is a sadder, darker place, at least in the Pacific Standard Time Zone. That does do it for me. I'm Cheyenne Hollis. This is the Touchback. Subscribe if you would like, and as always, hashtag take it out to the 25.